Let me tell you a story that never made headlines. In 2008, while millions of Americans lost their homes, their jobs, and their life savings, a handful of hedge funds made billions by betting against the very mortgages that were destroying families. One manager, John Paulson, personally took home $4 billion in a single year. Not his fund, him, personally. That's more than the GDP of some countries. While your neighbors were being evicted, these guys were buying mansions. Welcome to Forgotten Finance, where we dig up the money lessons that Wall Street buried. I'm your host, and every week we expose the financial truths that powerful people don't want you to know. Because today's lesson is one they definitely don't want you learning. But that's just the beginning. Today's hedge funds have evolved into something far more powerful and far more invisible. They're not just betting on markets anymore. They're controlling them. And it's time someone talked about it. Here's what most people don't understand about hedge funds. These aren't just investment firms managing retirement accounts. Hedge funds are exclusive clubs for the ultra-wealthy, where the minimum investment is often $5 million or more. They operate in the shadows because they're barely regulated compared to normal investment firms. While your 401k has to follow strict rules, hedge funds can do almost anything. Short sell, use massive leverage, trade complex derivatives, even influence company decisions. Right now, the top 25 hedge funds control more wealth than the bottom 50% of American households combined. Let that sink in. 25 firms have more power than 165 million people. But here's where it gets really disturbing. These funds don't just invest in companies anymore. They own your apartment building. They own your local hospital. They own the pharmacy where you pick up prescriptions. They own the nursing home where your grandmother lives. After 2008, when regular Americans were still recovering from the crash, hedge funds saw an opportunity. They went on a shopping spree, buying up hundreds of thousands of foreclosed homes at bargain prices. Companies like Blackstone became the largest landlords in America almost overnight. Today, corporate investors own over 3 million single-family homes in America.
In some cities, they own 30 to 40% of all rental properties. And here's the kicker. Studies show that when hedge funds become landlords, rents go up significantly, maintenance goes down, and eviction rates skyrocket. They use algorithms to maximize rent prices, sometimes raising them 20 to 30% in a single year. That rent increase you got last year that made you consider moving? There's a good chance a hedge fund algorithm decided that number. Not a person, not supply and demand. An algorithm designed to extract maximum profit. But housing is just one piece of the puzzle. Hedge funds have figured out something even more powerful: activist investing. This is where they buy huge stakes in companies and then force those companies to do exactly what they want. Here's how it works. A hedge fund buys 10 or 15% of a company's stock. Suddenly, they're one of the biggest shareholders. They call a meeting with executives and board members and make demands. Cut costs, lay off workers, sell off divisions, buy back stock to inflate share prices. If the company refuses, the hedge fund threatens a proxy fight, replacing board members with people who will do what they want. This happened to Toys R Us. Hedge funds bought the company, loaded it with debt to pay themselves massive dividends, couldn't pay the debt, and the company collapsed. 30,000 people lost their jobs. The hedge funds walked away with hundreds of millions in profit. It happened to hospitals across rural America. Hedge funds buy struggling hospitals, cut staff to the bone, reduce services, extract whatever profit they can, then let them close. Over 130 rural hospitals have closed in the past decade, many owned by private equity and hedge funds. Your town's hospital closing wasn't bad luck. It was a business decision made in a Manhattan boardroom by people who have never set foot in your town. Now, you might be wondering, why doesn't the government stop this? Here's the uncomfortable truth. Hedge funds own the government too. Not literally, of course, but close enough. Hedge fund managers are among the biggest political donors in America. They give to both parties. They fund super PACs. They hire armies of lobbyists. Between 2000 and 2020, the finance industry spent over $6 billion on political influence. That's billion with a B. And it works.
There's a reason hedge fund managers pay lower tax rates than teachers and firefighters. It's called the carried interest loophole, a tax break that lets them classify their income as capital gains instead of regular income. It saves them billions every year. Every few years, politicians promise to close this loophole. It never happens, because hedge funds make sure it doesn't. The concentration of wealth and power in hedge funds creates problems most people never connect to them. When hedge funds buy farmland as an investment, food prices go up. When they invest in pharmaceutical companies and demand profit maximization, drug prices go up. When they push companies to cut costs, good jobs disappear and are replaced with contract positions with no benefits. This isn't conspiracy theory. This is documented reality. Studies from MIT, Harvard, and the University of Chicago have all shown that hedge fund ownership correlates with lower wages, fewer benefits, higher layoffs, and increased inequality. So what can you do about it? First, understand that this is happening. Most people don't even know hedge funds exist, let alone that they're reshaping American capitalism. Knowledge is power. Second, pay attention to where your money goes. If you have retirement savings, ask questions about what you're invested in. More funds now offer options that avoid companies engaged in predatory practices. Third, support politicians who actually fight for financial regulation. Not the ones who just talk about it, the ones who actually introduce and vote for bills that would restrict hedge fund power. The era of quiet hedge fund control is starting to crack. More journalists are investigating. More lawmakers are asking questions. More regular Americans are waking up to what's happening. Change is possible, but only if enough people care. The next time someone tells you that your rent is high because of supply and demand, or your hospital closed because of market forces, or your job was eliminated because of efficiency, ask yourself, who really made that decision, and who profited from it? Because the biggest money lesson we've forgotten is simple. When someone gets extremely wealthy, someone else usually pays the price.